Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. And in this video we're going to be looking at every single shield power, whether it be controller, healer, tank, movement mode, iconic, supercharge. It's all going to be detailed in this video, so if you want to skip to those results and my breakdown of them, you can do so in the timestamps in the pinned comment. It's going to have that link. What I found was that when I was testing my previous Base Shield Multipliers in my videos, I was using the Doomsday Dot and Doom Metropolis, and while that's the strongest damage over time in the game for a solo, it does give inaccurate results to certain shields. So you just saw Envelop, this is Hibernation, we have Phase Dodge, Contradict Ground to a similar degree, but what it is the damage cap of shields is based on your shield multiplier. But these three supercharges in particular, or not supercharges, but shields, in terms of Hibernation, Envelop, and Phase Dodge, their damage cap is based on duration. So you have a massively high damage cap, but it's only for a few seconds. So basically, you know, Phase Dodge, that's why Phase Dodge you could tank like Ultraman's Laser in survival mode, doesn't matter. Like, you can tank hundreds and hundreds of thousands worth of damage, but only in that short duration that it lasts for, and then it ends. Where if you pop like a Blessing or a regular shield, you still have a longer duration it still lasts for until you reach the damage cap, which happens pretty quickly as well, or it just goes right through it. But that's why Envelop and Hibernation work a bit differently. In terms of, if you know a high damage hit is coming, you can pop that as long as there's no shield penetration, which is the issue there, that there are shield penetration mechanics. But as long as you don't have that, you just saw, you know, at CR70 with 299 defense, I'm taking massive damage with Envelop because of how the damage actually works. So let's kind of show some of the other footage here, a little bit sped up, so you don't have to watch me fail and die hundreds of times. And then you can skip to the results if you want. Okay, so before we touch on the actual results and talk about them, I do want to actually address the math aspect of this first, just so people can understand where I'm coming from, what this means. So the Base Shield Multiplier calculation is 112.5% of your restoration, and then added together with 150% of your dominance. So for example, the stats in this video, I'm CR70 because I'm taking off all the gear that gives me defense. So the lowest possible defense I have is 299, except for the 2 tests with the improved stealth hand mods, because I had to wear hands obviously for the mod. So that changed my defense a bit. I want to test it with the lowest defense so I can see the max value that you can possibly reach on some of these shields, as you saw from the beginning with the Envelop and Hibernation, Phase Dodge, stuff like that, which can't be tested normally. So for example, these stats are basically your multiplier is going to be the same result if you're, you know, fresh CR255 skip tank with no artifacts. Your reflection is still going to be 1.21 multiplier. If you are CR296, max elite, full 200 artifacts, same thing. It's the strength is going to be the same multiplier. The only thing that'll change is how much damage is absorbed based on your stats. So for example, in the test footage you saw my reflect takes 6904 damage. So if I'm doing 6904 damage and dividing it by 5690, 625, which is what the calculation was at my stats, I get 1.213, bunch of digits. I'm rounding it to 2 digits. So basically in reverse, you can also know, that's because you did the test. So say if you want your Earth right now or Ice or whatever, and you want to switch to another tank, you want to know, okay, how much damage is that shield actually going to save me? So the same thing, you can use these multipliers the other way. So you have your stats here, your multiplier, 5696 2.5, And the same thing, so we want to know how much damage is actually absorbed. So let's take immolation, for example, is 1.52. So if I do 5690, 5690, 625 times 1.52, same thing. So immolation with those stats is going to absorb 8,649 damage roughly, because obviously the 1.52 is rounded up, so it's going to change slightly. But that's essentially at that stats. That's how much immolation is going to absorb. So you can do the same thing for other shields. So if your multiplier is really high because you have like 10,000 resto and like 30,000 dom or whatever, then yeah, you can calculate how much actual damage your shield's going to absorb into those and use that calculation for your rotation. So that's essentially what it is there. Some of my tests, I think like 4 or 5 of my tests were done at this testing. It's still a 299 defense, still CR70. It's just for some reason my stats slightly changed. I think it was either my generator buffs or lead buffs, something happened with them. But that's essentially what those were tested at. Okay, so now going over the results. Nothing too surprising in terms of if you followed along my previous Base Shield Multiplier testing videos. This is the first one I've done all together in terms of every single one tested. I split them up individually before. Hibernation and Develop, that was, like I said before, that was more me improperly testing it in terms of having a high dot versus burst damage, because how those shields worked in terms of not really having a damage cap per se. It's just how much damage you take within that short second window. Everything else, you've got a few like Rage Immolation or Rage Redirected Shield working differently in DPS and tank stance. It's a lower modifier in DPS stance. Same thing with like Corrupted Blessing. When you're using Corrupted Blessing, it's a 0.73 to yourself, which will be fine for like solo content or duos by chance. But in terms of actually using it as a heal, even though it's got a 4-second duration, it's only it's a 2.18 to the second player. So that's what the issue is, that Corrupted Blessing is only for yourself and one other person, where obviously Blessing would be for 4 people, and it's a 1.92. So that's the little asterisk there on Corrupted Blessing. Concentrated Ground, once again, that one is more for people. You're still going to take damage through it, and it's more for only covering the area of effect, but it's still powerful. It used to be a lot more better back in the days in terms of survival mode. You've got Boon of Souls, the Sorcery Shield, being technically the strongest out of all the healer ones. So Flux, Bubble, and Swarm Shield are all the same at 1.94, where Boon of Souls is slightly higher. Tempest Guards obviously the weakest. I talked about that in my water guide. There's so many mechanics now that have shield penetration, and you're going to take damage through Tempest Guard. It's not going to be 100% absorption, so it's one of those things where it's not as necessary, not as viable to use Riptide and have double Tempest or running Tempest and Bubble. It's just not as practical. In some situations it will be, but overall for generic healing, I don't use Tempest Guard anymore for those reasons. But I use Flood of Power, and that's why Flood of Power is so powerful. So we go over the actual rankings here. So like I said before, Develop, Hibernation, Phase Dodge. Same thing like I said before, Phase Dodge is always going to be up there because all the mechanics like shield penetration or say like Merc's Gut Hook, or it doesn't matter what your stats were, you're always going to get put to 80% health or 80% damage. Those type of shield penetration mechanics don't affect Phase Dodge because Phase Dodge isn't a shield. So that's why I have such a problem with Phase Dodge and want to see it being changed for survival mode or anything else comes in the future, because Phase Dodge, it's not a shield. It doesn't obey any shield rules. So basically, it doesn't matter how much damage you get hit with, you're going to tank it. So even like Ultraman's Laser hitting you for like 500, 600k, doesn't matter. You'll tank it as long as you time it within that window of Phase Dodge, which is roughly about 4 seconds. So it's just that you're pretty much damaged. Like there's no damage cap, similar to like Envelop and Hibernation, because obviously they're much stronger than Phase Dodge theoretically. You just have to you'd have to have like astronomical hits for that. But the problem is like those huge hits you come from NPCs and raids and stuff had few shield penetration. So that 90 and 113 base shield multiplier, you never get to reach because it's being mitigated by the fact of the mechanic, where Phase Dodge doesn't have that issue. So if we go for it, like I said before, improved stealth amount. It was interesting that the mental one was actually stronger. So if we go back to Mentals was an 870 and Gadgets was a 7.63. I found that kind of interesting that it was different stealth mods. But I guess the same thing. It's technically not stealth. It's stealth versus invisibility. So technically invisibility is a bit stronger. Taking a look at the ranking again, we had Amazon Deflection, which is similar but not to the same degree as Phase Dodge. It's just Amazon Deflection is available as an iconic power, so anyone can use it, but you can be stunned out of it. Mass Density being the strongest tank shield is Atomic. Flood of Power, this is the nice one. That's why you want to run it as water. and use that a build around that, resetting your cooldowns, because look, it's so much stronger than everything else. Like Flood of Power is stronger than like even like a Gemstone Shield or Group Transducer, the same thing. So Group Transducer, Sacrifice, Transcendence, you know, it's almost twice as strong as Transcendence. And it's, yes, it's a personal shield, not an 8-man shield, but for the same thing, if your healer isn't going to die in content, you know, stands a really good chance that a healer with the strongest personal shield and he's not going to die and has full access to his entire cooldown bar again, presents you the best chance for survival, rather than just popping an 8-man shield and hoping you don't die through it. So that's my concept there before. And before, same thing with the ranking. You saw that survival, munition shield is the weakest, and followed by distract. But it's not designed to be a strong shield. It's designed to be a detaunt. So, which is even funnier because Lightberry doesn't have the detaunt. So Grandeur, Quantum Tunneling are stronger shields, and they drop aggro where Lightberry doesn't. So that's where, another reason to poop on Light. New Neutralizer, once again, that's the other thing too. New Neutralizer has a shorter cooldown, and it's not a hard taunt. It's not an aggro drop, but it's way stronger than Light Barrier. Rocket Retreat and Rocket Retreat, they're technically, or Rocket Jump and Retreat, they're technically not shields per se again. It's like damage mitigation. But since it's 100% absorption, then you get hit by it, you get that advantage. You saw that more in like PvP, people running those because they have much, much shorter cooldowns compared to everything else. And then Tempest Guards just eking out above that. Then obviously Reflection, and then Density, which is Density and Immolation being the main shields for those tank power sets, and they're so weak compared to everything else. They're barely above Reflection, and Reflection is the secondary shield. And then you got Event Horizon, Active Protection System, so all the controller power supercharges, so Battle Drone being the highest, which is what my issue was when that was made 30 seconds, because Bastion's the same thing, but Bastion is 60 seconds, and that's 30. And then the power set shields, Time Bubble, and everything else. So you get the ranking there. And going back to the actual modifier. So that's it. I don't need to kind of go through everything in detail. This is more just so you guys have the numbers in front of you. And like I said before, you can use those calculations to figure out how much your shield's going to absorb if you're curious and want to know that information, if that's going to help you in your terms of your gameplay. But that's essentially it. And I should also mention that it should be understandable that the 8-man shields from controllers, even the healer ones or tanks, they're based on your base shield multiplier. So if you're an atomic tank and hit mass density, that 6.1 mole modifier and how much your base shield multiplier calculation is, the result of the total absorption is based on your stats, not the stats of the 7 other players. But that should go without saying. So if you guys have any questions or concerns about this, you can put them in the comment section below. I will link the Google Sheets address to this guide, or not guide, but basically Excel document in the comment section, as well as be linking the forum post that I'll make for this on the official DCUO forums as well. So take care, guys. Thanks for watching.